Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. I am my good friend Yiwen. He is the CEO of Nitro Labs, and we're going to be discussing Termina. Real quick, Solana, it's known for high-performance blockchain infrastructure. Could you describe what you guys are trying to accomplish by, we'll call it extending Solana?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So, we've seen as a lot of apps on Solana are scaling, they're hitting limits or other kinds of issues with the L1. And so they've been moving more and more of their workloads off chain to network extensions or L2s. And so for us, our goal is to try to keep as much of that on chain as possible through either batching transactions or through verification of proofs, things like that.
Now, I believe when Solana started, and it's been a little bit, but I believe they were referred to as like one single state. So now with the, I guess, splitting off and seeing people create L2s, what is kind of Solana Foundation's view, if you know, on kind of how things are evolving with the ecosystem?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely been a change since one Solana first emerged as a new global shared state L1, but I think these different perspectives are not necessarily mutually exclusive, especially when you come at it from the perspective that network extensions are not taking anything from the L1, but are in fact trying to keep things on chain as much as possible and to enable new use cases on the L1 that wouldn't be possible otherwise. So,
Yeah.
specifically, how I see Solana's network extension path diverging from Ethereum's rollup centric roadmap is for Solana, you've seen novel use cases, application specific use cases that have arisen. Whereas for Ethereum, it's a lot of very general purpose rollups that are essentially interchangeable with each other. So if you deploy on Base versus on Arbitrum versus on Optimism, like OP mainnet, it's kind of the same environment. But for Solana, for these network extensions, it's very tailored to the specific use case or project that is leveraging it. And I'm happy to go into more detail if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's define what a network extension is, and I'll add some additional color for the rollouts. People can go back to Optimism's episode and hear a little bit about how Ethereum is approaching this. But some people call it essentially parasitic on the main chain because they're like, well, what's the future of Ethereum if all of these like app rollups come out? So talk to us a little bit about what is a Solana network extension and how does it kind of offer a different vision to the one that's presented on Ethereum?
Yeah, for sure. The term network extension has been coined fairly recently, so it's still a bit broad in terms of it doesn't refer to a specific type of architecture or design. And then for our team, we see this term as being a bit more holistic, a bit more comprehensive than just L2s alone. So you can have different things that you don't necessarily use a traditional roll-up fraud proof for other types of off-chain execution that you ultimately verify on the main chain.
Mhm. And if we get to Termina's exact, vision, is it to provide developer tooling to better facilitate the creation of network extensions? Is it like give us exactly what you guys are trying to accomplish there?
Yep, that's right. So we've seen in the past year or so, even before the congestion issues on Solana mainnet this April, we've seen many projects migrate part of their workloads to off-chain L2 like instances. There's many across different verticals, for example, KubeNet, for example, Code, Grass, the data rollup, and many others. So these teams are all application teams. They're not building L2 infrastructure for other people. They're in fact just building this for themselves to address a pain point, a need that they have. And so these are multiple independent occurrences of everyone kind of reinventing the wheel, doing the same thing again and again. And so our goal is to build this network extension stack so new teams that face these similar issues can just take it and run with it instead of spending a lot of time into it, like in the infrastructure, and they can focus more on the business and application logic at hand.
Yeah, could you give us some examples? I guess one that comes to mind, even though they're not a network extension specifically, but people can go back to the episode. They were talking about when they essentially forked Solana at the very early days
Yep.
because they would have taken up all of the block space. Talk to us a little bit about like these kind of app rollups or how we would see them as being slightly different than like an Arbitrum or an Optimism.
Yeah, for sure. I actually wrote a blog post about this that's on our website if you or others are interested in reading further. But essentially, I think one good example besides Pith is Grass. So they are designed as a data rollup, and that's because they're hitting millions of requests per minute, and that's not economically or technically feasible to do on the L1. You just can't validate that many requests at that rate. And so they've designed a sovereign rollup where the L2 is in charge of hosting and verifying the data. Uh, and then the proofs of that data is what's posted to the L1. So it's still the commitment to that data, the attestation to that data is still on the L1. So you have that guarantee, but a lot of the work has to be done off chain. And then yeah, go ahead.
No. Continue.
Yeah, and then for Pith, there's other projects like them that have created Solana permission environments, or SPEs, as people like to use the term. And SPEs, it's the same technology, but there's different use cases or features that it provides for you. So for Pith, they needed their own L1 network that they needed to customize to support the Oracle use case. And also, if they're sending data to other L1s, other L2s, it makes sense for them to have that central point instead of it being on Solana directly. For some other teams, the reason they want to have an SPE is because they want that the data transactions on the network to be private or permission, because they can't just put it on an L1 like Solana.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then because we're on the topic of Pith and oracles and kind of real-time data integration, talk to us a little bit. I believe you guys are offering a feature like that, or at least oracles and real-time data integration. Talk to us a little bit about what you're hoping to do there and how it works in practice.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a marketplace of different add-ons that people can pick and choose and customize what to add to their L2 network extension environment. And so that includes Oracle data from different partners. It includes other things as well, like NFT standards and so on and so forth. And so you have your base roll up with some of the built-in programs that are available just by default, and then you can also customize it with different things that you want to add. And so this is a bit similar to Caldera and Conduit and what their kind of deployment flow looks like. So you pick the basic configurations, and then you can pick the add-ons.
Yeah, I was actually just doing this for Gelato, very similar type of company. And then talk to us a little bit about kind of who you see Termina being really good for. Is it like a company like Pith? Like what kind of verticals do you think, best lend itself to having a network extension?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's many verticals that our network extension stack is going to be useful for, but I can share specifics on the teams that we're collaborating with right now. So, for example, if you want to ZK prove SVM transactions, that's one part of our network extension stack. So we have the whole stack, but we've designed it to be the components to be very modular, so you can plug and play these different modules. You don't necessarily need to use the whole stack, so it's not all or nothing. There's three main modules right now. One, the SVM engine, that's just the SVM instance. One is the ZK proving aspect, the ZK SVM, and then the last main portion or main module is the data module. So one of the teams that we're exploring with, they're interested in generating ZK proofs for their SVM transactions and doing all of that off chain. So all they have to post on chain is just the verification of those proofs. And most of that computation or execution happens off chain, where it's a lot cheaper. For the data modules, where within the network extension stack, it's typically used for posting the transactions, the state that happens on the rollup or the L2. But it can also be used as a standalone module if you want to have a data rollup. And this would apply to deepen teams like Grass and also other projects that generate a lot of data that they need to keep off chain, but they want to store a commitment on chain.
That makes sense. And then talk to us a little bit about kind of are you guys helping with, we just interviewed, who was it? Soon, and I believe it was Unit Network, and they are actually building, it sounds very odd to say, but they are using Solana to scale Ethereum. And are you guys essentially helping with those types of projects as well, like people that are looking to use the SVM but still live inside, say, Ethereum land?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Soon and also Eclipse. I think both of those projects are building SVM rollups on top of Ethereum. So it's the value prop is like instead of an EVM rollup on Ethereum, you can have an SVM rollup on Ethereum. And I think that's quite interesting. For us, we're more focused on Solana and helping Solana unlock new use cases and new scalability limits. So I would say that's the main differentiating factor.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And let's imagine, Solana is able to, achieve like a much better TPS, much better, transactions, even though it's really already probably first in its class. How would you guys position yourself if like Solana just keeps getting faster? Is that at the end of the day very good for you guys? Or is it like, we're kind of this network extension business that kind of relies on people building off chain or, extending the chain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have two parts to my answer. One, I believe block space and our team as a whole, we believe block space is is a is something with induced demand. So if you have more of it, then there's going to be more demand for it, and you've seen that on Base with and Ethereum. So as transaction fees have gone from like tens of dollars to less than $1, there's actually more transactions that are happening because it's cheaper. So some of the use cases that people can't do on Solana or on chain period right now, with cheaper fees and more and higher throughput, you can actually have more use cases. So I think that's quite bullish for Solana and also Solana network extensions. The second part of my answer is that with network extensions, it's not only throughput and scalability, but it's some of these other factors that I touched on as well, like privacy and also having permissioned environments and keeping things off chain, not necessarily because they can't scale, but because like that data cannot be public.
And let's say there's like a Solana app that is scaling, maybe we'll say it's like SocialFi or something of that nature, and they've got to post a lot to the main chain. At what point do you think people should start evaluating these network extensions and being like, you know what, maybe we do need to split off partially?
Yeah, I think any app that reaches scale at this point needs to consider a network extension because it's like not economical or technical to post everything on chain if you have millions of data points or millions of requests happening.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then talk to us a little bit about some of the upcoming features and upcoming developments you guys are hoping to integrate.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things we're working on right now is ZK SVM, and we're currently stress testing that with some partner teams. So this work has been challenging on the technical front, but it's something we're very excited about as well. The main or shedding some light on the technical challenges, the Solana virtual machine inside is actually a BPF virtual machine, and that was designed to be run in a 64-bit environment. However, for a lot of ZK VMs, those are currently 32-bit environments. So when you have something that you're trying to run in something else and they expect different bit lengths, you have a lot of incompatibilities and memory issues. So that's something that we're collaborating with Anza and also the Succinct team on.
Yeah, that seems very exciting. And then a question about Solana in general. We've seen Solana kind of take a lot of the, I guess we'll call it, crypto Twitter mind share and a lot of the developer activity. I think if I look at the A16Z report, they had the biggest increase year over year in builder interest. What do you think is really attracting people to the Solana ecosystem? Because there's many ecosystems out there. People aren't building on Algorand all that much, but talk to us a little bit about like why you think Solana has really been able to catapult itself into probably being the top two chains.
Yeah, for sure. I can share kind of our origin story and why we decided to build on Solana. So we actually got deep into Solana after FTX, like basically right after the crash, which is a very interesting time because a lot of people were leaving the ecosystem then. But for us, we had two main points of reasoning. So one is the technology. We really saw the Solana virtual machine as a departure from other previous blockchain VMs. Some things that are sort of table stakes, right? Like um, parallel processing, local fee markets, state compression. These are just built into the chain. You don't really need to uh, build your own thing on the chain to make your app work. They're just available. And then the second thing that we saw, and I think which really helped lead into this current bull run on Solana, is despite despite a lot of like FUD and bearish news about Solana post FTX, the ecosystem that remained was really strong, and people were pushing out a lot of innovations. There was a lot of activity that was still happening, and so those two factors made it clear to us that Solana was going to make a resurgence. And fortunately, we didn't have to wait too long before we saw kind of a correction in the market and renewed interest in Solana.
Yeah, and then I guess this is a question on future blockchain. So we see like a Monad and a Mega ETH, and they're all touting very good performance metrics. Do you think this is something like people will just stay on Solana because of maybe some of the network effects or some of the apps that have already been on there, or do you think this is something like Solana will see what other chains are doing and implement similar kinds of speed improvements?
Yeah, I think Solana's the core team on the behind Solana is constantly shipping new features that make the chain more secure, more stable, and have better performance. So I don't think just because Solana is having a lot of interest now, the team behind the network is going to stop shipping. So I definitely think the chain is going to keep improving, and then as there's more interest in people building apps and pushing the chain to its limits, there is also going to be more demand for infrastructure, better infrastructure to support these teams.
Yeah, and one of the things about the infrastructure, I know you guys have some kind of sandbox environment. Could you tell us a little bit about like what that is and how that helps with development?
Yeah, so we currently have, or we're currently in the private alpha phase of our DevNet, and so we've been launching instances for teams that reach out to us. So, for any listeners, if you are interested in something, please message me or our team. And so currently, it's a permissioned setup. If you go onto our website, you're not able to self serve and make your own deployment right now. But if you reach out to us, we're happy to support you and to launch an instance for you. And so some of the teams that I mentioned earlier in our conversation, this is what we've been doing with them.
Amazing, amazing. And then one question we always like to ask is we have a lot of builders that listen to the podcast. Is there an area of the Solana ecosystem or generally in blockchain that you feel like is underdeveloped? We're always looking for startup ideas or interesting areas that people can build on.
Yeah, I think something that has a lot of real world value at the application layer right now is payments and also stablecoins. And yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things happening in that space, but there is also a need for new innovations and new projects to push that space further along too.
Yeah, and I believe you're in the Bay Area, right? It must have
Mhm.
been. It's quite incredible to see Stripe, one of the major companies, then buy Bridge. I think it was like
Yep.
1.1 or 1.2 billion, and the
Yeah.
company got started
Mhm.
18 months ago, which is, I believe,
Right.
correct.
Yeah. And I think Stripe, they have a crypto team. Like they could have very well tried to build out something like Bridge themselves. They're not some um, traditional older company that can't move fast, right? And so I think that also says something, like the fact that the buyer was Stripe.
Yeah, and then this is a more general question: is I feel like DeFi and stablecoins definitely probably the biggest product market fit that crypto has found. Do you feel like there's an area that, like, we'll call it Main Street, has not yet recognized about crypto that will be one of the main things that takes off?
By Main Street
We'll
or
call it
mainstream?
you could call it mainstream, normies, anything you want.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, I think stablecoins don't have that much penetration within the US just because everyone's using USD already. But I think there can definitely be more as people are engaging in overseas payments and cross border payments. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here in Colombia where I live, it's the thing I use the most. Actually, of crypto products, it is the thing I use the most, aside from maybe a wallet, and that's just to go get my stable coins. So, very interesting conversation. And where should people go to learn more about Termina, start building on Solana, and look at these network extensions?
You can visit our Twitter and also our website. So our Twitter is at Termina XYZ and our website is termina.technology.
Lovely. All right. Well, and where can people connect with you? I don't know if you're big on Twitter or LinkedIn or anywhere.
I do have a Twitter, but I don't post much in it. So I think the best way is just to DM our like team Twitter, Termina XYZ, and we'll respond very quickly.
Perfect. Well, everyone, go engage with Termina and let's continue building the future of Web3.